Hello, hello, hi, folks. Welcome. Happy Saturday. In hopes that you squeezed more out of your day than the day squeezed out of you. Welcome. Good to see ya. I was reading this book today, Go for No, and it's such an easy read. That's very, very thin. And in it, they were talking about the Pike syndrome, and I had never heard of the Pike syndrome, and such a fascinating story, and what a great way we can use what a great way to take this story and use its feedbacks or takeaways and plug it into our own life, or in our own lives, if you would. You'll see what I mean. So pike is a mean fish. It's a big, mean fish that eats other fish. So and it will do whatever it can to find its its food. So scientists did this test. They took this pike and they put it in this tank, and they put all this fish that the pike would normally eat in the tank. But they separated the pike and the other fish by this glass barrier, if you would. So when they put the barrier in, pike sees the other fish and keeps just tapping on this barrier, if you would, right? Keeps tapping, trying to get through to get to the fish. But eventually it feels like this is not working out, obviously, and gets completely discouraged and just kind of just sinks down to the bottom of the tank. Well, at this point, the scientists removed the barrier and let the fish kind of float around. And what happened next was kind of really surprising to them. So what happened next was, as they removed this barrier, if you would, the fish come floating around throughout the whole tank. And to the scientist's surprise, the pike didn't make a move. The pike didn't even try to eat any of the fish because it was so discouraged by the fact that it couldn't get through that barrier, if you would, that it completely gave up. In fact, it actually stayed at the bottom of that tank and it died. And it's such a powerful little study, because we can definitely take those points and translate them into our lives. So pike was defeated by these imaginary walls, imaginary thoughts, because when that barrier was removed, the fish were even right around him. And yet he never made a move to take any of them, to eat any of them, and therefore starved to death. Isn't that interesting? Even though the fish were like right next to him, but he was so discouraged that he wasn't having it. How many times in your life have you gave into these imaginary walls, these imaginary red flags, these imaginary obstacles that don't really even exist? How many times have you said, oh, it's because of that, I can't do it? And you just sit there at the bottom of the tank, even though the baits and everything is all around you, and yet no move. That's a major point. That's a first point. that we give in to these imaginary walls. Money was happening. And the second point is that the Pike did not ever respond to the changes in the environment. Clearly, the barrier was removed. Clearly, that environment that he started with the barrier in place, with him tapping against it, clearly that environment changed once they removed it. And yet the Pike was stuck on the bottom of the tank, depressed and discouraged, not paying any attention to the changes in the environment, the things that are happening around you. Can't deny that stuff. We deny that stuff, we starve. The Pike got defeated by his own imaginary thoughts, by his own imaginary obstacles, right? You build these obstacles and you build these things in your head, and I do the same thing. It's not like just you do. I do the same thing. That I can't do this because I can't do that. I can't do this. I can't do that, right? And you build these things, these imaginary obstacles, imaginary walls around your mind, and you don't let your mind be open and free, right? Kind of sucks. First, you got these imaginary walls that don't even exist, and you're like staying within those, but there's no barrier, there's no wall, but you're like refusing to go, just like the Pike. And at the same time, you're not paying any attention to the changes in the environment. Yes, there was a barrier first, there were some obstacles on your way first, but they were removed. So you can just sit there and just say, well, there were obstacles there like 10 years ago. Well, yeah, that's not there anymore. You see, you got to be able to change. You got to be able to recognize the changes in the environment, your environment, what's around you. I'm not talking about world news. I'm talking about you under your roof, in your heart, in your soul, like those things. You gotta pay attention to these things, right? I loved this story. Well, it's not a story, it's a study. And like I said, I got it from I was reading this book. Like, it's so thin, guys. Like, I even read this in like one day. Like, I even read this in one day. This is like, I don't know, 70 some pages, 74 pages long. So, yeah, I got it in this book, from this book. So, thought of the day. Hey, pay attention to two things. Pay attention to the imaginary walls that you are building and you have built around you. Those imaginary walls. Imaginary obstacles. The ones that don't... If you really sit down and you really think to yourself, the one obstacle that you really thought about, like, this is the reason, this is it, right? And you sit down and you really, really have a heart-to-heart with yourself, and you really think about that one obstacle. Is it really an obstacle? Is it? I mean, I'm talking, you get to the deep roots. Is it really an obstacle, or is it just something you tell yourself? Pay attention to that. And second, pay attention to the things that are changing around you, the people that are changing around you, the environment that's changing around you, the platforms that are changing around you, the way people do business is changing around you, the way people make money is changing around you, the prices of gas, I'll keep talking about them until they go down. I cannot believe $6.25 a gallon. You can get a Big Mac combo less than that, I guess. But you got to pay attention to these things, and they're going to come in handy. Hopefully you got some love, inspiration, value. I got you thinking a little bit. If you feel like you got some value and you feel like, hey, I got somebody that could use this, tag into this, share it on your wall, do what you got to do, spread the love. But I want to know from you. I want to hear from you, like your thoughts, your takeaways on this study. What hit you? Or if you're really brave, you can drop down in the comments and say, what is that one imaginary obstacle that you have built for yourself that you keep going to? What is that one imaginary obstacle that you've built for yourself that doesn't let you go forward? What is that? Drop it in the comments below. Let this feed grow. I appreciate you guys. And until tomorrow, when we do it all over again. Much love.